Good morning, Signature, and welcome to the Fabulous Sales Meeting this July 25th. Oh my goodness, the year's half over. Kids are getting ready to go back to school, right? That's good for some. With that, in case you don't know, most of you, hopefully you all know, that we are doing a school supply and backpack drive. It's being headed up by our Sky Canyon office, Pete back there. So if you have any questions on that, please reach out to him before he leaves. But we're collecting donations in all offices. The other thing is there's a sign-in sheet. Make sure you sign in, because at the end of the meeting, we're going to give away these two 10-year anniversary Yeti mugs. And so these are heavy duty. I think they hold a lot of juice. You got to be present to win. And so that's another reason to come in. For the Fabulous Breakfast, we're going to start doing our giveaways too as we go through here too. The management team met last week after our Fabulous Quarterly Leaders Lunch, which we held at Panavino. If you weren't there, strive to be there next quarter. It was a great lunch. But we met after, and we made some decisions on the sales meeting. So at the beginning of the year, we decided to rotate them around between the three offices. We're going to change that up a little bit, because the majority of our agent population, or majority of agents, are in the two offices, Green Valley and the Southwest. And so we get a better turnout in these two offices than we do at the Northwest at this point. So we're going to do the first and third sales meeting here in the Southwest, and the second and fourth meeting in Green Valley. So we'll rotate week after week. And if there happens to be a fifth sales meeting in the month, which it happens 2 or 3 times through the year, that will be a virtual meeting. Okay? Reminders are good. So they do go out. Watch for them. They're in the agent's signature. And as always, you can watch them online too. But we do like to see your smiling faces. Many of you have gotten calls or emails from some of our staff. We're doing an audit based on the business licenses. If you don't know, you have to have a real estate license, obviously, to sell real estate, right? Then you have your board membership, right? That happens. And then you have to have a city business license. If you're in this office, it's Las Vegas City. If you're in Green Valley, it's Clark County in this office. It's Henderson City in Henderson, and it's Las Vegas City in the Northwest. And then the third license you have to have is what's called a state business license, where you apply for that on Silver Flume. And so a lot of people have been confused because they're asking for that state business license or a copy of it. It's not your city business license, none of that. It's that state license. So hopefully you're staying up on that, because they have pretty severe penalties if you let it lapse. But it is mandatory that you do have a state business license. And with that...
Oh, one thing on the license before I forget. So we made an agreement about 10 years ago with the municipalities that if you're going to practice real estate, and just because you sell a house in Henderson and then you sell one in Las Vegas doesn't mean you have to have one for each. It's just wherever your license is. Unfortunately, when we made that agreement, the city of Pahrump has decided that they're more important than some of the other cities. And if you've been to Pahrump, they do absolutely feel more important out there, because you're driving 45 minutes to get there. So they have a $25 permit that they're now trying to get real estate agents to purchase. So if you're out there holding an open house, if you're out there touring a property, they may actually ask you, do you have your permit? Now it's $25 for, I believe it's a 6-month or 1-year license or permit. I haven't heard anybody getting, in trouble for it or fined for it. I think the fine is $25. So, but I want to make you aware. I want to make you aware of it, because I would hate for you to be caught off guard if you're going out there for a listing or something like that. So just be cognizant of that and have your licenses.
It's probably next to your fishing license.
Exactly.
Somewhere in your tackle box somewhere. So
catch your limit. No. So I want to take a second, and Brandon and I want to acknowledge 2 very special people, and we want to acknowledge Ellie and Tyson for their hard work of running for Las Vegas, director of our Las Vegas Board of Realtors. They both did an amazing job, and over 800 votes cast for each of them. Unfortunately, the cutoff was around 1050, 1051 or something in there. But I just got to say, Ellie, The videos you did were absolutely amazing. I know because I was in one of them. And it was just a great way of kind of putting out there a great message. And so that was awesome, and Tyson as well. Let's talk about LVR.
Let me just say something on that too.
Yeah.
Tyson will be a future leader in this industry. It's cool to see him step up, especially his dad. But I also want to say, Ellie, it's been a pleasure serving with you on the board. And the growth you've seen over the last 2 years, that board is weaker without you. And so I hope to see you on it again someday soon. So.
And Ellie, we're so mad about it. Brandon and I have decided we're quitting. We're not serving one day after the end of this year. We're done. But he is absolutely right. Ellie's been an amazing voice and yells at me all the time while we're sitting across the table. I want to ask you, just in your opinion, and then you can ask me, what do you see happening at LVR over the next year when there's not a signature agent on that board?
Well, we hope they survive. No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, it'll go on. It's an association, right? And as much as people think it's this big deal to be the president of the board or whatever, you're just...
Wait a minute. Let's not get carried away.
It's not. After last year, it's never going to be... No. No, it's you're doing a service for the association and giving back, which is a great honor. But overall, I mean, don't lose sleep over it. The association's going to be there. I don't think we're going to implode it from the inside. I think the things that we need to look out for are the external factors. The way our industry's changing today because of the lawsuits that NAR is involved in that have to do with buyer representation and different things like that. So that's going to be the hot thing over the next few years, I believe, is watching how that's going to change our industry. My recommendation is get used to presenting the buyer agency agreement. That's going to end up being a must. I can almost guarantee you that you will need a buyer agency agreement to represent a buyer, period. And so that's the biggest thing. On the state level is more on the legislative and looking out for our industry. And I think that's going to continue on, obviously, as they push forward. We've got a great lobbying team. There was a big CEO change. Teresa McKee resigned, and now we have Tiffany Banks. If you don't know Tiffany, Tiffany's been there 10 plus years. She's led up leadership. I think the state association is in really good hands with her. And sometimes change is good, right? It's sad to see Teresa go, but sometimes a fresh look at things and stuff like that can do some good. So I don't know if Tom ran her off, but no, he didn't. And Tom's doing a great job as president up there this year. So, but I think you're going to see more of the same moving forward in protecting our industry. How about you?
So my take is just a little bit different. The buyer agency, absolutely, and I actually even think you're going to see the association lobby to make that a law, where you would be required to have an agency agreement, just like in Utah and some of the others, because it does give cover for you as an agent to go to your client and say, hey, I need this. The client's going to think, well, you're just saying that so you get me into an agreement. If it's a law, then you have that power of, hey, no, this is actually the law. I have to present this to you, and that would be a much better process, in my opinion. I kind of look at this whole thing, and I've been on there for over a decade, right? And thank God I'm finally going away. It's kind of like the changing of the guard, in my opinion. You have a new administration that's coming in. They have completely different goals, completely different ways of saying things. Our group was kind of holding on to the changes that we protected in the past. And now you've got a completely new group that has never been in these conversations. And so, hey, listen, sometimes you get what you hope for, right? And so I hope they get everything they hope for.
I was trying to be a little more diplomatic.
No, and on the state level, I think that every session we've gone into, the best thing about the state association coming into it this next year will be that Brandon will be our president-elect and Tom will be a past president. And I think what we're going to see is that every session we go into, everyone talks about the fact that it's going to be the worst session ever for real estate. I haven't been on one session where Rocky hasn't worst session ever for real estate. Just like to say, it sells tickets, right? And so, but he's right. Every year we have a fight for something different. It's usually landlord-tenant guidelines. We were going into one of the worst sessions ever with hundreds of bills for landlord-tenant issues because of COVID, because of budget deficits, and you notice none of those really came out. we have an extremely powerful lobbying group at NVAR because of the fact that we put realtors in the Capitol building. And so now, we've got people that are seeking chairmanships of committees. We got people that are moving up through their leadership. They're looking for people to run on the other sides of the parties that are there. And so if you've ever considered political office, now is the time to jump into it. But I think what we're going to see is we're going to see a little bit of a stabilization of some changes that were made. Governor Lombardo vetoed more bills than any other governor in a session. So one part it's good, and on some parts it's bad. A lot of things didn't get through, but a lot of things didn't get through. And so that's why it wasn't as bad as it could be.
It could have been very bad if he didn't
Yes.
veto a lot of this stuff. So elections do matter, and coming into this next election cycle, when they do vote, it's going to be very important that everyone votes. I don't want to get into sides of it. Realtor Party kind of goes down the middle, who's right for property rights, but I'll just tell you, a supermajority for any party is not what we want. I mean, we need balance. We need discussion up there. So be aware of all that stuff and pay attention as we get down there, because the state, we have a legislative team and all that actually interviews these candidates and goes through, and so they'll recommend the candidate that's best for property rights and stuff like that. So when you're voting, at least consider that, or at least make sure that you've gotten that list so you can see it, and then obviously make your decision on whatever you want to vote on, because it's your vote. So
the title of this meeting was Market Stats Update in Industry, I think it was Industry Issues or something like that. So what Brandon and I did is we put together a list of topics of things that we really hope that everyone in the company knows about. Some transactional things that we're seeing that we're concerned about, and also just some information on the marketplace. So first I want to start off with, just by a show of hands, how many people think in the next 2 years the real estate market will get better versus worse? Raise your hand if you think it'll get better versus worse. Okay, so
what's their definition of better?
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm here right now, and tomorrow I'll be better. I don't know what I'll look like, but I'll be better. That's the market, right?
Then I'll raise my hand.
Okay, good. I agree with you. I think that one of the things that we've looked at, one of the side effects of service in the association is we sit through a lot of updates. We hear from a lot of different perspectives and groups. And I think for the residential market, even with interest rates being in the 7s, my first home loan was 8.25%, right? I didn't care. I got to own a house. I didn't know how bad 8.25% was, because all I knew was it was better than 10, which is what it had been. And so I think the perspective is there's always a need for people to buy, sell, and invest in real estate, because would you rather put it in someone else's pocket or your own? And the answer should always be your own. And sometimes there's a cost to that, but one of the questions I got asked by a new agent, and says, well, my client's really worried about the fact that they're paying such high interest rates and that they could come down. And I said, what is their highest tax deduction at the end of the year? And they sat and thought about it. What is the average consumer's highest tax deduction? Yeah, their insurance, or their interest, not insurance, I hope not. It's the interest that they pay on their mortgage, while that's still allowable in our current congressional climate. I would rather get that money back at the end of the year as kind of a forced savings, where I can actually write that off if I qualify for it, but it's something that people forget about. And so even though they're paying that higher interest rate, that money could still be going into their pocket down the road, but at least they own the home. They get the chance for the home to increase the value, get the chance to let their kid paint their room and stick stuff all over the wall, right? I mean, can you imagine that? You're moving in boxes every year or every 2 years, and everything you got to pack up, and that's not really your home, so you don't unpack those boxes, right? It's that security, and I think that's one of the big reasons why people see that.
I think you've got to sell your clients, or let them understand what the impact of the interest rates are, and that they're not that bad, right? But first, you've got to get it right in your head, because until you believe it, until you believe that it's a good time to buy, you're not going to be able to help anybody else do it. So you got to get right up here first. But I agree. I think the whether the market gets better or worse based on interest rates, or based on pricing, or based on inventory or stuff like that, there's always a need, like Chris said, of people wanting to buy, sell, or invest in real estate. And your job is to get out there and get in the middle of it. One thing that Mike Ferry said when he was in our office in Green Valley, he talked about our inventory problem is caused by who? Us.
Sellers that won't listen
And
to
it was
you.
an interesting perspective, but it's because we're not going out and prospecting and generating those listings. There are people that need to buy and sell. There are people that need to sell or want to sell, or there's a benefit for them to sell, to upgrade or downgrade or things like that. They just need to be talked to. Somebody needs to plant the idea.
Yeah.
And until that idea is planted, it just doesn't happen. So we're seeing in this market, and he's going to go over some of these stats, but you're seeing there's still sales, right? Last month was a record low number, but there was still sales. There's sales happening. You can still make a boatload of money in this industry. You can still make all the same kind of money you made a year and a half ago. You just have to work 2 or 3 times as hard. But if you're committed to doing it, you can do it.
So I'm not going to give all positivity because there is one part of the marketplace that I think will be a concern, and that is the office retail marketplace. And so here's what's happening that I see happening. Many of you probably have read the articles. Did anyone read the article about Elon Musk defaulting on Twitter's rent payments for their space? So this is pretty intelligent for the richest guy in the world, right? So he buys a company for $44 billion, puts all the money together, purchases it, and then realizes that they have the most expensive office space in the city where they're at. And so landlord doesn't care because they're getting a premium and they're taking care of the space, and so he stops making his rent payment, right? And so they start the initiation of going through the process of evicting Twitter from their space. And so what it did was it forced the owner of the building to the table because there was several $million in unpaid rent that hadn't been collected by the owner. And when you go through that process, all he would have to do is bankrupt Twitter, change the name, and he's taking the product something else, which that was an article.
He changed the name.
Yes. But here's what happened. The owner of the space came to him and said, okay, what should we negotiate? And they negotiated a new deal on that space that saved him almost 30% of the cost of rents. Now, what I see is that trend is happening because there is a ton of vacant space that is not leasing in commercial buildings. If you've seen a Bed Bath & Beyond before, you won't see one again, right? All of that space is going through a conversion. And so those big box stores, people aren't going to I don't even go to the grocery store anymore if I don't have to, because we order everything to the house. And because I order it to the house, I get all of my coupons and discounts and the whole thing. So I'm actually saving money even though I'm paying someone to bring it to me, right? But that's a trend happening nationally. So I think we're going to see that piece of the marketplace go through some type of rebirth. And I think we're seeing that everywhere. And you need to know about it because your clients are going to ask you. So do you know what they did with the Bed Bath & Beyonds around the city? They turned them into gyms. So now I'll have to go and walk around that place again, right? With my coupon. But the whole point was, you had Halloween stores. Yes, the one out in the Northwest rents out the entire space just for their seasonality. I think Leslie's is the smartest because they turn theirs into pool shop in the summer and a Halloween thing in the winter. But I think you're going to see all of these big spaces, really start to make that change. And so when your consumer sees that and they see these empty shopping centers, what do they think about their community? They think it's on a decline, right? Well, when they realize that that square footage was being paid for at a massive premium and all someone's looking for is a discount, that's a big difference between the sky is falling and the world's just, going through a change. Yeah. Yeah. She's got her name badge on and she's going to the store. I'll be honest with you. I don't go to the store on purpose, but without fail every day, my wife calls me out and says, oh, you know what? I forgot to get milk. I'm like, you ordered everything to the house. How did you forget that one piece? Oh, we're going to make this tonight. Can you go by and pick that up? So I still have to go, but I go for one item. It's really a lot of fun. All right, let's talk about the market stats. I'm going to recoup a little bit about June because that is the one that's out there right now that's on the single sign-on. If you haven't taken the opportunity to download the report and send it to your database, you're doing yourself a disservice. I understand if you don't want to send them pretty pictures, just do a video recording of you, the most beautiful face you have, and send it to them and to share with them these quick stats. So How many units do you think sold in the month of June? 1,600. Anybody
You should
else?
all know.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Plus or minus, higher or lower, higher or lower? Higher, higher. 2,293 units sold in the month of June. By the way, that is horrible sales numbers compared to our average, which is usually around 3,000 homes that sell on average in the marketplace. I don't think it's the record low because there was one that was at 2205, I believe, but 2293. Now, here's what's really kind of cool. Signature, last month in the month of June, sold around 250 homes. So we have over a 10% market share in the marketplace of the selling homes because our agents are training and actually working, and a lot of agents have decided the sky's falling, so we're just going to get out from under it, right? So keep that in mind. How many new listings do you think went on the market in June? Anyone want to take a guess? Guess. 900,000?
Higher.
Higher? Higher? I feel like Price is Right. 14. It's actually 2,617 new listings went on. Now, here's what's interesting. The average price of those new listings was around $575. Do you know what the median price was for our marketplace? It was $449.90. So we had 2,600 brand new listings that went on the market. Those listings median price was $575. And if the new listings going on are at a higher price, what do you think will happen to the median price? I'm not sure yet. They haven't sold. No, it'll probably go up. And how many homes do you think are available right now without offers in the marketplace for June? 3,680 homes. So for sake of context, that means that we have a 1.6 month supply. The lowest supply level we ever had in the marketplace was 2.4 weeks. Okay, that was when everything went crazy. All of the houses had 3,500 offers on them. It was the same home everyone looked at. You just got in a different car. It was the same thing.
I was president.
Yes, you were. And
Just
we
thought I'd
blame
throw
you.
that in there.
Here's the stat that really should stun everybody. 65.5% of all single-family homes sell in under 30 days. So of those 2,617 listings that went on the market, 65% of them will sell within 30 days, and that has been the average of 60% or more for the last 6 months. So even considering that, we've seen homes that are overpriced, yes, right? We've seen homes that are just absolutely crazy priced, yes. Still 65% are selling right away. This number does not have new construction in it. It would have the listed new construction, yes. Standing inventory. And they sell in 65% of the time.
But what we're seeing, the ones that don't, that almost 40% that doesn't, why do you think that is?
I didn't list it.
Very overpriced.
Pete didn't list it.
Right? Yeah, Pete didn't. You guys didn't price it. It's overpriced. And the longer it sits overpriced, the less money they're getting, actually.
Okay, so this stuns me, and I'm sharing this with you because this matters. When people are priced out of the marketplace because the sales price is $440, what product do they go to? Condos. So 600 and I'm not going to play the guessing game anymore. 646 condo units sold in June. 743 were listed, and there were only 930 condo units available, which is a 1.4 month supply of inventory, which is pretty low for the condo market. What do you think the average price of a condo is in Las Vegas right now?
Yeah, you shouldn't play this game anymore.
Man. 275. 275. By the way, does anyone remember 2010, 2011 when we were selling condos for $31,000 and people didn't want to close because they thought it was too expensive?
I didn't want to buy a condo because I thought the condo market would never come back.
Yeah, right?
There it is.
And they're building condos like crazy, and if you don't like the location, just burn them down. Sorry, bad joke. I don't work for the insurance company.
Way too soon. Way too soon. It's still smoldering out there.
66% of all condos in the marketplace, steady average, sell within 30 days as well. So even that entry-level housing point is selling quickly, and we're seeing an increase in the amount of homes that are actually selling, thank goodness, because agents are starting to get back to work. But the whole point is, what do you think about this market? Is it a tight market? Yeah? Do you think it's returning to a seller's market? Absolutely. And so what should a buyer be doing? Buying. I'm encouraged because they're halfway there. It means that your buyer should be extremely motivated and not messing around with obstacles when they're not ready to go out and do what you ask them to do. So what I see happening a lot is people aren't sitting down and explaining to a buyer the market that we're in. They're not explaining to the buyer the history of how we got here. They're not explaining to a buyer what it feels like to have your offer rejected because you're not good enough. Don't let your buyer not be good enough. You guys have the opportunity to sit down with them and motivate them and show them this information so that their offer gets accepted, and that's what we're seeing. The agents that are doing that are presenting in a better light to the other party. By the way, do you think there's agents who list homes that don't understand what market we're in? Has anyone ever run across that agent? Right? So again, it's important that the message come from you and that you be putting it out there in the marketplace. Any questions on that? Any questions at all? Barbara?
Is there a way?
There's always a way.
What I'm interested in knowing is what is the ratio between investors buying and true owner-occupied people buying right now? How do you find that?
So on the single sign-on, it's going to be a little bit older, I'll be honest with you, because they haven't come out with the new one. But there's a 143-page report that was provided by Applied Analysis. Now, the cool thing about Applied Analysis is they're an economic group that does analytic stats for the Board of Realtors. They own Sales Track, so they have all of the home builder stats also available in the reports. And they do economic updates, so they pull in all of the local economy, state economy, and actually the national U.S. economy into the report. They present that report every year in, I think it's in September? It's coming up. And one of the pages on there talks about the amount of investors in the marketplace that actually shows the trend of investor purchasing. We got asked the other day about licensure surrenders, meaning people coming from California that go to the DMV and they surrender their California driver's license. It was 63,000 people, I believe, last year. And here's something funny. In an article in the paper this morning, there was an article that read that the primary relocation group coming to Las Vegas is from California. People from LA are moving to Las Vegas. People from New York are going to Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Sarasota, other places down in that area. They're not coming here. I mean, that's not their primary move area.
Stay east.
Yeah, they stay east. But the whole point is it has those reports in there that you can pull out and provide those as supplementals in your listing presentation.
The other thing you can watch is cash purchases. You know, because if those are increasing, then you can tell that. But not to say that owner occupants don't pay cash too, but if you're seeing a large increase, which we have, so.
For a general number, is it 65% of them sold? 65%?
65.5, yeah. Sold in 30 days. Sold in 30 days.
But if you take that number times the number of sales for the month, plus or minus the owner, they generally backing out the owner occupant.
Sure.
That can give you a rough idea of what's happening.
It's probably got to be 30% of the market at least.
Or higher.
Yeah.
And you can just lick your finger and test where the wind is.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot of factors you can look at. But the big thing is the applied analysis reports. They run a little bit behind, like a month, but it's still information that we should be knowing. I mean, when we're asking these questions, or Chris is asking these questions, we should know those answers, because these are the things that we should be talking about with our clients.
Just one more show of hands, if you will. Has anyone received any phone calls or text messages from any investors that are looking to buy your off-market properties? Hey, listen, I'm going to tell you, when I got into real estate years and years and years ago, all I hoped for someday was that investors, cash investors, would call me up on the phone and want to talk to me. And now when they do, I hang up on them.
Or I block them.
Right? Or I block them. But I just want to say again, because I said this in a couple of meetings ago, I've actually taken a few of those calls and had the conversation and had these people come to their senses when they find out what's going on in the marketplace and actually write some offers. I'm not saying they got accepted, but I'm saying that they actually became clients instead of just random people who went to the wrong seminar about real estate. Because what do I know about them when they call? They have money and they have a desire, they just have the wrong formula. And so reconsider when you get that text message, just don't send them anything inappropriate. Yeah. Right? Do you have any family members I haven't met yet? So that's all we had on the stats. Now we've got some issues in the industry that we want to talk about. And the first one we want to bring up is something that we're seeing that people still aren't really paying attention to, and that's probates. So we're lucky here at Signature because we do have a probate expert in Steve Hoops, who does about 40 to 60 of those transactions every single year. and he's agreed to kind of be a resource for us as a company, and he's in the app. Don't text him right now, kind of,
Ease
spread it
into it.
out. So spread it out for a while.
He also did a sales meeting here, if you remember, and it's
Yes.
on YouTube, so you can go back and look at it. If you're going to do probate, I'd say watch that. Even before you call him, just watch that and get into it. The other thing is the board has put, as they've increased, and they are increasing, the board has put together some documents for you. One's a probate disclosure and transaction desk. You should be familiar with this form, and then there's kind of a FAQ sheet if you're listing a probate or your buyer doing a probate. So if you're going to do these, the first thing is you probably should read these, and then you should watch that sales meeting first, and then decide if it's something you want to do and go down that road. And if you don't, Steve Hoops or somebody that does probates might be a good referral source for you as well. It gets done and you get paid.
So one big point about probate that agents are mistaken on that can get them in a lot of trouble, and I'm talking massive liability, so I hope everyone hears what we're going to say on this. When it comes to a probate sale, in our contract, there's a provision under state law that says you cannot have a purchase agreement that violates the law. And you cannot have a purchase agreement that supersedes the law. So I can't make up my own wording and verbiage that contradicts what state law says. I can regulate state law at a local level, and they can bring out ordinances and things like that that we live by, but I have to keep that guideline. And so in the purchase agreement, we have a cancellation provision. I go into contract on something, I do my inspections, I'm within my loan contingency, I'm within my appraisal provisions. As long as I provide proper notice, in every other scenario, I can provide you with my notice that my loan was denied, the appraisal didn't come in, the house is a junker, I don't want it, and I can submit my cancellation and get my earnest money back. However, in a probate sale, you can't do that, because once you get court approval, you have been ordered by the judge to buy that house. Meaning that if the buyer backs out, there's actually an entire guideline regulation in state law that says exactly what has to happen. And once the judge bangs his gavel and says you are the buyer at that price, you're in violation of state law if you don't move forward. And so if you cancel, you also could have major penalties. Tell them about
So
the
wait a
penalties.
minute, let me ask you this. In the contract, it states that liquidated damages are agreed upon and it's the earnest money, right? And this is where we've got a contract that contradicts probate
Yes.
law. And so that doesn't apply. And so if the judge agreed or gavelled it and said it's selling at $425, the buyer doesn't buy it, the seller ends up selling it for $350, what's the damage?
All of the money that I lost, the time and energy that it cost me, and the additional legal fees, and any other thing that they can think of to say that this is a loss to the estate.
It's over $75,000
Yep.
in that scenario.
The $2,000 earnest money won't cover it.
Not at all.
No.
And so when you look at this and you say, okay, well, as a buyer, I'm not sure that probate's going to accept it. So why would I go down this path of getting an appraisal and doing my my inspections, my due diligence? Because of that. Because after the gavel goes down, if you do your due diligence and what happens, they find something very structurally wrong with the house, they're buying the house. Right? And so they want to know ahead of time what that is. Well, what if they don't get the bid? What if they go there and they're outbid? What would you do? I mean, they're out this money of an appraisal and the due diligence.
So the interesting part is, first off, people aren't telling their buyer who's buying a probate deal to go to the court when it's up for a bid. You need to. Many
They
times,
should. They
many
don't have
times
to. They
they don't
should.
have to, but many times they just don't know. They didn't get the letter. It went to their agent. The agent didn't know. The agent doesn't go to court. That's not their thing. I'm not an attorney. Blah 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 blah, and they just don't show up. And so the point is disclosure of information. It's your job to become the source of the source. So if I was doing a probate deal, I would take the section of the law, I'd put it in an email with a link to where it comes from, and I'd send it to my client and say, I want you to read this so you know what we're dealing with, right? Because many a times, clients don't even understand it. And then as they go through that process, the other point of it is, you as the agent whose offer was accepted under the law, this is great, this is the good part, you are due half of the commission regardless of if you get outbid. So you're due half of your 3% commission, that is what they label it on there. You're receiving half of that money to yourself. That, I don't think it actually says 3% in there. It's half of the commission.
Half of the buyer's co-op.
HUD is the only one that actually says that. It's the other side. So when that happens, they will cut you a check. And so if you were to get $6,000 on a deal that never closed and your client's out the inspection and the cost of the appraisal, and we're talking about $1,000, wouldn't you think it'd probably be a good idea to reimburse your client, those funds? That's how I handled it in the one that I dealt with. I did go to court. I did take my client. We did get outbid by a lot. I knew the deal was too good to be true. And I received a $4,000 commission, but my client had already done the inspection and the appraisal. And so I gave them a credit of $1,500 that they took in cash to cover that. And we went out and bought another home. But the whole point was that part of it is in the law to protect you from that work that you did by getting it into contract and going through the process.
No.
No, I received the funds. I could go and reimburse them. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Pilar?
So from Steve's meeting, this was interesting. There are 3 different variations of probate. There are also short sale situations where they're getting court approval because they have a judgment. Like if I owed Sunrise Hospital $100,000 and they have a judgment against me, it could require court approval for them to remove that judgment on the title so that the title will clear it. So there's some different variations there that will happen, but the whole point is there's probate and then there's court-approved sales, like a divorce. Some divorce proceedings require that they go back to the judge for court approval, that they approve the price on the property and everything that's happened. So you just got to know which one of those it is.
And the neat thing is on this probate disclosure, it has all the laws on it, like the numbers and stuff like that, so that you can direct your clients to the right place.
No pictures or pop-ups.
Working on that.
Yeah. And it has initials for up to 4 purchasers. Isn't that great? That's awesome.
And for estates.
And 4 estates. Yes, it is. Absolutely.
And the FAQs, this is just a good read anyway, so.
I would have my client initial that, by the way, if I were to send that to them to show that I gave it to them. Do you want me to go into the rest of mine, or you want to go down the road on yours?
Let's jump into the next one.
Okay.
FIRPTA.
Okay, for $1, who knows the exact wording of what FIRPTA stands for? Sherry. Eh. Okay, next contestant. Okay, that's enough fun for me now. Okay, it's Foreign Investment in Real Property Tax Act. Okay? And so the reason we're bringing this up is that a couple of things that we've noticed that have happened with FIRPTA, that agents are providing bad information to their clients that we need to be cognizant of. Number one, please do not tell your client what will happen with the FIRPTA conditions, because you're not an accountant. Anything that you say that isn't linked to an actual source could cause you liability. And so here's what I usually do. I find an accountant that specializes in foreign investors. There are many of them out there. If you Google accountant who specializes in foreign investors, Google will pop up a bunch for you that you can take right there. I told a client one time, and I've only done this once, who was from Canada, that they should form an LLC for protection. What I didn't know, because I'm not an accountant, was that when you form an LLC as a Canadian citizen in the United States, the LLC is taxed in the United States, and because it's a corporation from a foreign country, the government of Canada re-taxes that entity again higher than the tax they would have paid as an individual without that LLC. And so my client, thank God, because I referred them to an accountant after I shot my mouth off, was able to fix it, but I could have caused them tens of thousands of dollars in liability because I didn't know what I was talking about. And so from that point on, I've always made it my point to find a great source that provides that information instead of me. And so be very careful about those type of disclosures without actually knowing that you talk to somebody.
The other thing, in the RPA, there's a place for the seller to disclose it, right? How many of you are checking that? Like, as a buyer's agent, when you get the offer back, are you looking? Like, if it's blank, what do you do? Ask them. I mean, we've got to know so that your buyer understands going in, so they're not finding out last minute, right? The other thing is as a listing agent, you need to make sure that your seller is accepting those offers properly and checking all the boxes.
By the way, did you know that if it's a primary residence in the United States, there's actually an exemption that the seller can file for so that there is not a withholding? I didn't know that. But what I also found out is it takes up to 2 to 3 months to file an exemption for that type of property. And so what I'm saying this for is that if you right now have a seller who would be subject to FERPTA and they're going to be listing their home, now is the perfect time to call them up and say, hey, listen, I don't know if you know or not, but my title company provides paperwork that may grant you an exemption for this tax not to be taken out. Would you like to connect with them and see if you qualify for that exemption? And so the whole point is it's a great time for you right now to engage them in that conversation to see if something can benefit them. Do you think that if you save them 20% of the sales price not being taken out, they'd be grateful clients forever? I would be.
Okay, I've dealt with this quite a bit.
Yeah.
And they have become, no one had to file any document to be exempt. If it fell under the 3 basic rules, which was under a certain dollar amount, owner occupied buyer, and what was the third one? I can't remember right now. But you didn't have to file any documentation to be exempt.
Every deal I've done where they've exempted them, they had to fill out a form at title that actually
Title company's
qualified
helping
that.
you.
And let me tell you why. Because if it's not done correctly, the buyer of the transaction is responsible. So don't say there's no documents, because there's documents.
There's never something, but there is something, right?
There is something. And the other thing is,
Something I didn't have to file in advance and wait for a response.
but the point is, you can't guarantee that. And so that's why you put it on the escrow company or their accountant to file it so it's not you. Because if I'm at closing on a 20-day escrow for a cash deal and I find out we're waiting for a 2-month exemption because this one time this happened, I'm the one that's going to look like an idiot, right? So I'm going to put it on someone else to be the idiot. I'm too experienced at it.
That's why I usually call title. if
Correct.
I'm decided to use, and talk to their professional.
Yep.
But not an accountant. So that's a
The other thing is the buyer's tax liability, even though they say, well, it's really easy, you don't have to do anything, there's nothing there, technically if it's screwed up at any point, that buyer in that transaction who is a U.S. citizen is responsible for that tax that is messed up. And so if that happens, imagine the conversation that person has with their client.
Potentially, the agent could be responsible too.
Yeah.
This was one transaction I was looking at, it says, and it's a very small transaction, it says, this is for this transaction, the seller will credit the buyer this amount of money.
Yes.
But if it's not the right amount, then the buyer is
Correct.
responsible for my sake, I would be responsible for that deficit.
I would want layers between me and that conversation, right? I mean, I would want the title company, the title attorney, I would want the escrow officer. I mean, I would want every single person I can throw under the bus at the end of the day to say, all I did was find these people, it's not me, right? Because that's what's going to happen. I'm the only person sitting in the transaction with a $2 million insurance policy that's really easy to sue. And the other people can, you know, they don't answer their phone when I stop calling. Janet, you have your hand up?
Well, I was gonna say the same thing Sherry did, unless it's changed recently, as long as the buyer was going to be owner occupied, this is where it may eliminate what was existing. And the purchase price is under $300, then there you go.
If you can find a house under $300,
I'll buy it. I'll even pay the tax.
You're right, $300,000, but
They've changed it.
yes. And the parameters changed on that because what's the median price right now? $440,000. Find a house under $300,000. Angela?
Have you ever seen it, is it possible for the seller to lie?
Yes. I've actually had one transaction that I was part of where the seller didn't understand that they were not from the U.S. and they didn't fill it out. Seriously, they didn't understand. They didn't fill it out. It got through the process. Nobody asked. It got to escrow the day before closing, and this whole hullabaloo came up because there wasn't any money to transfer to the IRS, right? And so I don't know how they figured it out. To this day, I still don't understand, but they did. They worked it out. But the problem was that was a huge liability. But when you look at the contract, the question was asked. I had nothing to do with the listing. Wasn't the listing agent. It was the buyer's agent. But the whole point was that's why we put those questions in at the board so that you have the ability to point to it and say, when you're taking a listing, it asks the question. When you're selling a house, it asks the question. That's the point where you as the agent is supposed to question it when it's not answered.
So just to
That's enough out of you.
add to, I know, but I,
Go ahead.
excuse me, but my boss name.
I'm not buying any of your tickets now.
So
Yeah.
on the contract, that's why it's so wonderful, is I assume
Sure.
these people were Bosnian refugees, and this is who I've been dealing with 99% of my clientele is that, so I just assumed. Fortunately, my husband, who helps them do their paperwork for their green cards, and he's
Yep.
like, Sherry, that lady never did that with me. And I'm like, well, maybe, of course she did. No, she didn't. And so lo and behold, she was not a citizen.
Yeah.
So,
And I'll be honest with you, it's a very delicate question to ask somebody. You got to be very careful about how you ask it, but that's why we put it in the contract so that you can point to it and says, well, this asks if this applies to you. That's the point of it. And did you know that you can take parts of the contract, pictures from your phone, and actually translate them if you needed to? So that's a cool thing we can talk about later. What's it stand for again? Foreign Investment and Real Property Tax Act. We've had many people from title. That's why Janet's got so much notes on it. But we'll have another one. Okay, anyone done a 1031 exchange lately?
He had to throw in the lately.
We appreciate that sale added to the numbers. So I'm bringing this up because we've been getting a lot of questions with it. This is a great product. It's not a primary residence product, by the way. If they live in the house, if they're physically living there with their kids' pictures on the walls, it's not a 1031 exchange product. They have to move out of it, turn it into a rental before they can exchange it. It's a great product for a client that owns investment properties. Can you imagine, and this is how I've used it in the past, I have a client that has 2 underperforming rentals, not because of me, and they're just not what they wanted. And so we've sold those 2 properties, 2 transactions, and we've bought multiple transactions somewhere else. The cool thing about 1031 exchanges is that I can take my $300,000 in equity, and let's say I have a $300,000 loan, I can move it over to another property, move in my $300,000 in equity because I can't take any of that cash, and I could get a $1 million loan if I qualify for it and take on more debt and buy more properties, right? Because that's how you build wealth. But the whole point is a lot of people are very non-creative when it comes to their client that has equity. This is a way for them to not pay taxes if it applies and purchase properties that cash flow better.
So he said not pay taxes. That's not necessarily true. It's deferred tax.
Yes, that's true.
Right? Because ultimately, in the end, if they sell that, whatever property they roll into, there will be a tax due. Right? It's just a tax
But I'll be dead.
deferred. Right? That's the idea, right? I won't pay it.
And I think some of them are banking on, because it'll be taxed on what the 1031 exchange was originally, so if
Yeah,
they
gains.
create equity in so many years, that equity now paid their tax, and they weren't taxed on the.
Yeah, so it works that way. Yeah, but is there a tax benefit to an owner occupant to sell their property and move into something else?
Talking about capital gains?
Capital gains tax. There is an exemption up to $250 for a single or $500 for a married couple if they've lived in the property 2 out of the last 5 years or whatever.
Yep.
So it is possible there too. So they don't need to do the 1031, but like Chris is saying, this is for investment property. Pilar?
Personally, I looked at the one exchange, and yes, you will have the option to take some money out.
But you'd pay
You
tax
do on
it.
yours, but you have to get taxed on it.
Yeah, whatever you end up touching or gets transferred to you, you pay tax on. The idea is you never touch this money because it goes through an intermediary company, and so you never touch it. You don't have to pay tax.
Do they count commission as income on it? They don't, right? Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's a
even better.
different kind of income.
I want to give you guys this number. Sarah, who was here and did a great class for us with IPX Exchange. They're one of the largest exchange companies in the nation. Her number, just so it's on record, 480-333-5970. Every scenario that I've had, I've called Sarah up. She answers her phone, and she'll run through with your clients. I looked at one that was a owner carry transaction where they had equity and they're looking to exchange it, and she answered all the questions and what would happen and the whole thing. And her fee, of course, can be charged out of that for what they do. I just want to remind everybody there is wording in the RPA for 1031 exchanges that are listed in there on it.
Chris, when you gave out Sarah's phone number, you left out the area code, 702.
480.
480-333-5970. Okay, so who here lately has gotten an offer on their property that they've countered, and while you countered that offer, you received another better offer? not recently, but I'm hopeful.
Who in here has sent a counter and meanwhile they hadn't answered it yet, or they sent you one and you hadn't answered it yet and they canceled it on you?
It's happened, right? So want to talk a little bit about this. So we had a Facebook comment about rescinding an offer. And yes,
You can resend too. Did it say resend in the thing?
I was filling it out, and you know how I just put rescinding instead of rescinding, and everyone thinks they're a friggin' comedian, but me, right? Ellie, I would have voted for you again if you hadn't brought that up.
Hey, they're reading your comments.
Yes,
That's
they
all
are.
that matters.
Now I lost my train of thought, you know.
There was a comment in Facebook.
Okay, so I send a counter out, and I want to take that counter back. How do I do it? What do you do? Okay, you send an email that's to notify the other party. Now this has to be done and documented on a timeline that shows that you sent this notification of communication before the other counter came back signed. Because if it came back signed and they accepted it, you're now under contract, right? I've had, believe it or not, I've had people try to defraud the system. And as soon as they get notice from me by a phone call, they sign it right away and send it back. So don't call them first when you do that. Send it in writing to them and then call them to confirm they got it, right? Because if they send it back right away, you'll now be under contract and a whole other slew of issues.
What if they, unethically, tell their client to time it before your
Doesn't matter.
That's a beautiful thing. They can do that, and guess who gets in trouble then?
their agent?
The agent, because they
That's the
they
point.
didn't deliver it, right? It's the delivery of
It's
it.
the proof of receipt to you.
And that's the other thing, though. Sometimes your client does sign something, and we lollygag on getting it back. You need to get it back. Time is of the essence, because at any time until that's communicated back, they could rescind the offer. They can cancel it, right?
I'm going to tell you this right now. There's never an instance ever, ever, ever for anyone to backdate anything for any reason. And if you're caught doing that, it's guaranteed you'll lose your license. I don't know a real estate commissioner that won't take it away, and I don't know a broker that wouldn't fire you, right? So it's always better to be upfront and honest about something to the point of talking with somebody. And if you have an occurrence where you're worried about what's going to happen, call your broker, right, and talk to them about it. They have ways to you know, I've thrown myself under many a bus, right? I got tire marks right here.
I would go a step further too. If you rescind an offer or a counter before you accept the other offer, have a conversation with one of us. Let's make sure that timelines are correct and we're covered, because if you accept that other one and you're in two contracts,
That's
it's
a
a
big
pain.
problem.
It's a big pain.
It might be a good idea to have an email from the seller authorizing you to send the email to rescind, so you have that as a paper trail.
Absolutely.
Before you send that, just in case there's confusion on communication
Yep.
from the seller, what they actually want. Also, send the email first, perhaps, to make sure it gets out there right away. While you're waiting for signatures, I would, well, you can correct me, but I would have the seller initial a strike through to write rescind on the counter offer and have them sign it. So
Doesn't hurt at all. It's always a good idea. I think the one thing that we see happen most often is seller texts you and say, hey, Pete, rescind my offer. I want to go with this other offer, right? Now you have this text message. The problem with, where's the text message? It's on your phone. It's not in your file, right? I document every chain of conversation I have with a consumer. When I get done with a transaction, I take photos of my text message chains and I put them into my file so that later, I have most of them now in the app, thank God, which is so much easier because then I can just email things back and forth to it. But I keep that record for that reason, because it timestamps it, it says when it happens, and that's written authorization to me to have that there. And I love your ideas. The more documentation that you can do to go through and protect yourself, absolutely. And let's take this a step further. I have an offer. My offer expired. I sent it to the, who am I sending it to? The buyer's agent. And they get my offer, and I put an expiration of 5 o'clock today because I was really hopeful that they were going to respond because they care who I am. And they didn't respond. And now it expired. What do you do?
You have to do something to update it.
Yes.
It has to
So,
be
so we
all
can,
agree that even though this is it, we're moving forward.
so we need an addendum that actually says all parties agree to move forward with this offer dated this date, and go into contract, right? Because if we don't have that addendum, that offer is technically voidable because it expired. I'm no longer held to the parameters of that offer. And so if I create that addendum, not a counteroffer, I'm going to create an addendum that actually says that we're all going to move forward and have everyone sign it. I now have a new execution date for that document on when we are now moving forward. Make sense? Correct. You can add it to a counter. Yep. If I'm on the other side of it, like Denise was saying, and we've had a counter, and the counter expired, I can put that into my other counter as I go back to them. We all agree to move forward and accept this and this and this, and however you write it out.
That's been overlooked for so many.
Very many years.
And if I mention that to the other side, to the other agent, we need to all agree and make a addendum.
Yep.
You're like, oh,
So,
Yeah.
so here's the thing. If you guys continue to act through the process and you're both doing actions to do it, no. It can be deemed that you both have accepted to move forward. What Chris is saying, let's not have any ambiguity there at all, and let's just clarify it. Because it's a great opportunity to say, hey, here it is, here's the acceptance date, and that's that. And then you can start the clock and start working through. And why would an agent not want to do that other addendum? It's laziness. No, it's 100% laziness. They don't want to do it. So draw it up, send it over, and they can get it signed.
And do it for them, yeah. Poor training. There are a lot of people, unfortunately, that came from not very fun places and where they learned how to do real estate. And Janet wasn't there to care for them. And so they didn't learn these things from those people.
And it's true, but it comes down to laziness. And let's not cut corners, because the corners you cut are the ones that are going to come back and bite you. It's just going to get you.
Okay, this is one that drives me absolutely crazy, and I know it drives many of you, and that's closing timelines. Whose responsibility is it to take out a calendar and figure out how my client moves into this home? It's yours as the agent. And do you as the other agent have a responsibility to make sure it makes sense? Yes, you do. I have received 2 offers from agents in the company that close on a Saturday. Okay, now I'm not saying that, they just didn't care. Yeah, it's on or before, but if it closes on a weekend, it'll be the next day, right? So the client's moving truck is there on Saturday, I guarantee it, to move out of the home, and they don't own it, and they haven't sold it, right? So my whole point about this is that this is a skill. This is a skill of a great realtor that sits down, they ask their client questions on, tell me about the scenario of you moving into the home. Tell me what we need to consider. Where are you moving from? How do you plan on getting there? Do you need all the utilities on when you move in, right? It's only 106 outside. It's a dry heat. You'll love it, right? People are not considering these things when they put a client into a home. That did the utilities get transferred? Did someone even tell them about it? Where's the mailbox key? Which mailbox is it? How many doors have locks and keys that fit them?
When do you have to be out of your other place?
Yeah. Here's the other thing. Did you know that you could put stipulations in the contract of what has to be turned over to you as far as the garage remotes and keys and things like that? I had a broker altercation a couple of years back with a very good broker that I know, and my agent wrote in, 6-car garage, by the way, individual 6 cars, right? Every garage has a garage remote. She wrote in, every garage will be provided with 2 garage remotes, which is what they come with, and 1 key for each door of the home. And the agent, of course, left 1 garage remote for the entire house and 1 key. And so we went back to the contract, and they had to write a check for $2,100 to cover all the remotes because the agent put it in the contract because it was that important. And so I'm just saying, take a little bit more time and skill to think about these things for your client's benefit, because this is where it really shines of why I'm paying you the money that you're worth to do the job you're doing. Make sense?
Situation with 6-car garage.
Yes.
those remotes, but you also have to pick your battles, because to make things move smoothly, maybe just go and buy some more remotes if there's no remotes available as a buyer's agent, because to track that down, to pursue them over a missing remote or a gate remote is.
I'll do it for you. Call me. I'm serious. I agree with what you're saying. I don't let small things bother me. I'd rather pay for it. But the point is to put it in the contract when it matters to them. Because I'm going to tell you right now, a valet parker lost the key to my car last week, and they replaced it with another key. I can't open my car. I can't remote start my car. I can't cause the car to turn on easily. And when I'm driving the car, it says key has been lost. And I'm sitting in the car. And it's because the remotes you get with something are different than the remotes you get to replace something. And so I agree with your point, don't sweat the small stuff, and I think that's the right way to go about everything. I agree. A normal situation, don't sweat it. But you could, it's easy. We can go to mediation. I can send them notice of my desire to be reimbursed for it. I mean, there's a ton of stuff I can do, but at least I thought of it for my client's benefit versus somebody else that didn't, at all. But I agree with you. 6-car garage, it's stupid. They all work for the same thing.
But
right?
but look at it this way. Just make sure you're reading the contract, because somebody else could put something like that in. You're in that position now, and what are you going to do? You're going to go back after your client to do it because you missed it in the contract? No, you're probably going to write the check for $2,100, or you're replacing the appliance, or you're doing something like that. So what Chris is basically saying here, the closing timeline, that's a detail in the contract.
That's important.
But everything else in that contract's a detail in that contract, and we can't just take it for granted that it's fill in the blanks and we move forward. There's a very real possibility coming soon there's going to be 2 RPAs. Okay, the state just wrote an RPA for the state, and there's going to be some pushback probably from the local, probably from some of the local brokerages and stuff like that in this transition between the two. There is a very real opportunity. There could be 2 RPAs out there, okay, under operating different things. And so we're going to have to be able to pay attention to those details. In the past, they could write their own RPAs. Like, there could have been any RPA. There still can, but the common practice is we use the association's form, right? But there was all kinds of clauses put in. There was people that were taking the contract and changing something in it so it looked like the same contract, but you weren't reading it, and so things were getting by. So it's important that you pay attention to all the details. And by the way, don't change thowose contracts because they're copywritten and you'll get fined.
I think the other thing that I don't see happen anymore, which was a standard of practice for years, and some of you guys will remember this, we used to have, it's still in there, personal property addendum, and when you'd go into a property and something mattered to somebody, and I'm not talking about like, this one random chair, but like this, beautiful barbecue that's outside, you used to get along with an offer as part of it. You'd write in, personal property addendum is now part of this offer, and they'd write in 3 or 4 of these features that mattered to them that they wanted to ask for. And so I think in the same context of the thing that's there, I always think of things that are really, really important. And I'm going to tell you a quick story, and then we're probably done. Sold a house in Club Aliante, and in the house was a beautiful $8,000 Sub-Zero fridge, and it was a silver Sub-Zero Frigidaire next gen whatever fridge. And I happened to write in the contract silver Sub-Zero next gen something fridge. Now I know that's overkill and it's really a lot, but I put it in there. We went to do the walkthrough, and sitting where the Sub-Zero used to be was a silver Frigidaire not next gen fridge. And it's only like a $1,200 fridge because they pulled out the one I had. If I hadn't written all that extra crap in there, guess who would have been responsible for that fridge? I don't know, and that guy would still be on the run to this day, okay? But the point is, I've seen that happen now 2 more times where those specifics did matter, and the only reason I put it in there, I would have never lost that battle, by the way, if I would have gone to mediation, because it was a hooked in, a fixed to the wall, part of the whole thing. But when I called the other agent up and they looked at the contract, they had a completely different demeanor than, on you, right? Because that's usually what we hear. And so I'm just saying that when it matters, consider putting it in there.
Do you have the sign-in sheet? Can you bring that up? Yeah, everyone sign in, bring that up so that we can,
I gotta tell you, these weigh at least 4 pounds.
yeah. Welcome to the gun show.
Don't throw it at anybody.
No, they're awesome, so,
Can I throw something else in?
sure.
So one of the things I was learned in NAR's risk management committee meeting was there are several states now that are not allowing Friday recordings. And the reason is because everything's being wired. And if your client's expecting a wire to be delivered on Friday and it doesn't show up where it's supposed to be, and you let the day go on, well, it's running late, well, it's past 2 o'clock, so we know the Fed's not wiring anything else. What you need to do right away is to call the bank and to call the FBI. But if you wait till after 5 o'clock on Friday, that money is gone. And so the suggestion has come from several states, and they've now made it mandatory. No Friday recordings. Just thought I'd throw that in there. We're not there yet, but that's something to think about.
Lois?
As far as closed escrow,
Yes.
I'm running into lenders who are not local. Their close of escrow means that's the day the buyers are going to sign, not record. Whereas our close of escrow is the day it records.
Tell them they need to read the RPA, because it's clear in there, but
Okay.
one settlement, one's closing.
Well, the banks don't care.
So we have two issues. This mic is way better than what I have. We have two issues that came up just recently that come on the same level. So I call Tony up, who's a great lender, and I say, Tony, what are the costs for my client to get this FHA loan on this house? And Tony spits out his estimated that he gives me. What people are forgetting is that your job as the real estate agent is to take in consideration all factors of what a client's going to do, because you know they're going to get a home inspection. You know they're probably going to get a home warranty. You don't know what and what amounts or the whole things, but you know appraisal's coming. It's to take the information you get from the lender, compile a net sheet that encompasses all of the theory of what would happen, and create that net sheet and provide it to the consumer based on the close dates and things that you know. And then as the offer gets accepted and things happen, it's your job to update it, because Tony told you that it's better for them to go conventional instead of FHA. And so now you've changed the loan parameters. You're responsible to update that information. Now, Tony sends you a great estimated because he's now done the conventional one. You take it, you look at it. It has to include your transaction fee, the fees you're charging. You create a new one and you send it back to the consumer. I know it sounds like a lot of work, but by the way, there's an app on your phone that takes 2 seconds. You can save in all of your information you do on every file and spit one out by text to tell your consumer, here's what it is. Because I'm going to tell you, I've been to a couple commission meetings lately where commissioners ask the question, did you provide your client with a net sheet? Well, the lender gave them one. Well, the lender's not the one who we're going to take a license away from. We're going to take yours because you didn't care enough to tell them. And so the whole thing is, as you go through that process and you get info from the parties, technically you as the agent are supposed to take that info, assimilate it, spit out some information to your client to say that this is how this will affect you, and communicate what all of the parties are doing, because that's your role. That's what they're paying you for. And so I love that you brought that up, because I'd question that many agents aren't doing any net sheets at all, and that's probably not a good thing for your file. You just staring at me?
So they're never going to let me and Chris do another sales meeting because we missed your mortgage moment. Are you prepared? We're going to bring you up. We're going to bring you up before we go. But before we go, the two winners, number one is Brian Edwards and Ellie Morris, okay? And the way that's done is we just have a randomizer app, and it just gives us a number, and we just go down the list, and that's what that is. Next week's sales meeting is here, first one of the month, and it's going to be an agent panel. So it should be really, really good. It's going to be moderated by the one and only Chris Bishop. Yes. And so with that, we're going to turn the time over to Tony for the mortgage moment and then to send us off.
Hello, everyone. Apologies for the late notice. I was literally drafted in at 9:32 today, so it's all my fault, basically. It always is. Anyway, long story short, appreciation, value appreciation, 0.7% in May. These are national numbers, let me stress, not local. That follows 0.6% in April. Obviously headed the right direction. Year on year, down 0.5, going back to obviously May of 2022. 0.9% down since the peak. We all know when the peak was. It was in June of last year, or thereabouts. Depending on who you listen to, there are forecasts for the whole of 2023 of 5 to 7 to 10%. Again, there's different analysis. I know that. There's different programs out there. But the point I'm trying to make is that anyone who's sitting on the fence right now, those appreciation numbers will dwarf what they are paying on their interest rate. Okay, absolutely. They'll blow it out the water. People feel as though it's an elevated interest rate right now. Look at 5 or 7 or 10%. Add that onto the property value and then see where they come out. Okay? And then one final thing, I don't think it's any secret, there are a lot of investors out there right now. Investors, as we know, will pay cash, or they don't care about the interest rate. They really don't. They want the value is in the property for them. So long as they feel as though they're getting a good deal and they can realize the kind of numbers I just mentioned, they don't care about the rate. They'll pay it off, or they'll refinance it once rates drop. So again, I would push, because rates are starting to come down. Values, as I just mentioned, headed the right direction. people need to get off the fence and start acting on some of this stuff. Okay? Any questions, anyone? Sorry? Rates? We're still looking at high sixes. But again, you know, small gains right now. The market's been a little bit up and down. But the more positive economic news we get, just like today, and there's a new report due out tomorrow. So if that's positive, I think we'll start to see some serious movement on rates soon. It was at the early part of the year, I do recall the forecasts were for third quarter when we'd start to see rates come down. I still think we can hold to that, yeah. Okay, thank you. Have a good day.
All right, guys, thank you so much. Sell something expensive, it helps.